And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
There's one huge thing wrong with this quote that's often overlooked. Senna was actually lying. So today I'm going to explain why this statement is wrong, how it's misinterpreted, and also why Senna was lying, which he actually admitted to a year after he said it. As Senna sat down for that famous interview with Jackie Stewart, a video clip was playing of the crash he'd had with Alain Prost just a few weeks before, at the start of the 1990 Japanese Grand Prix, a shunt that had resulted in both drivers retiring from the race, and in Senna winning the 1990 World Drivers' Championship. And Jackie Stewart didn't go easy on Senna.
You, in the last 36 months or 48 months, have been in contact with more other cars and drivers than they might have done in total.
Stewart was one of the only journalists brave enough to question Senna's aggressive overtaking and numerous crashes. The other journalists didn't want to annoy Senna for fear of not getting interviews in the future. But as an ex-driver and 3 times world champion, Stewart felt like he was on the same level. He also didn't seem to care about not getting future interviews.
I think maybe only myself could have asked a question because of my world championships, because he has won or did win the same number of world championships as I did.
Senna went on to explain the crash with Prost and defend his rather ambitious move, but Senna got incredibly irritated by Stewart's line of questioning.
What he said to me that day was he would never speak to me again, ever, when we came off the interview.
So, back to the question about the gap. If there's a gap, should you be able to wedge your car in there no matter what? Like Senna said in this quote. Well, I see myself as quite an aggressive driver, which means my take on this will inevitably be more lenient. As with any professional sport, there are rules, and I believe the best drivers, riders and players push up into those rules when it's required. We've seen it in many ways over the years with the most successful drivers. Senna, of course. Schumacher certainly pushed up against the rulebook, as did Hamilton and Vettel, particularly at the start of their careers, and as we now see with Verstappen. One thing to note here is that drivers are able to look fairer when they're dominating the sport. There's no need for them to be highly aggressive. Antagonising other drivers unnecessarily doesn't really make sense for long-term success. But when there's a close battle with a rival over a season or a number of seasons, the drivers will ultimately do whatever they can get away with to win. At least the really successful ones do. And I'm not saying that this is correct. I'm not really saying anything, it's just what happens in racing.
I'm not designed to come 3rd, 4th or 5th. I race to win.
The drivers inevitably stretch the rules. Just look back to 2021, where Verstappen and Hamilton really pushed things. And to be honest, can you blame them? Let's not forget, they're professional sports people. They're solely focused on winning, and it's only the rules and their implementation that keeps them in check. Sometimes the drivers don't even abide to these. So, should a driver go for a gap no matter what? Well, it depends on what you call a gap. In this particular case, with Senna, there was a gap. One where he couldn't get far enough up the inside for Prost to see him. The problem here is the deceleration zone for turn 1 at Suzuka is just too short. And as you can see, Senna was nowhere near alongside Prost. There isn't the time or space to get alongside another car here, and that's important. For me, if you can't get your car into the position where the other driver can see you in their peripheral vision, while they're looking down the track, remember, then you shouldn't go for the move. Of course, there's lots going on when you're driving an F1 car into a corner at over 100 miles an hour, and it's hard to judge as the overtaking driver, but that's where the skill is. In Senna's case at Suzuka, he was never going to make it. In my opinion, a longer version of Senna's quote should be, if you no longer go for a gap where you can get alongside the driver ahead before the apex of the corner without making contact, then you are no longer a racing driver. Although that doesn't look quite as good on a poster. And the original quote is something I hear a lot around the paddock. It's made its way into the lower ranks and amateur racing, and it's not good. Drivers think, Senna's the fastest driver ever and I want to be like him. And they carry that mentality into their racing. Overall, this single quote in isolation has had a negative effect on motorsport. And that sounds like a big claim. But the number of amateur drivers I've heard use this as an excuse for crashing into someone is higher than you might think. So, back to the quote and why Senna admitted to lying, which I'll explain after a quick ad from Brilliant. this week's sponsor. F1 technology has moved on a lot since Senna's time in F1. And if you're looking to understand more about science, technology, engineering and maths, Brilliant.org can really help. They have thousands of visual lessons that enable you to learn by doing, from foundational and advanced maths to AI, data science, real engineering and more, with new lessons added monthly. I found the course on search engines really engaging. It teaches you the theory behind how search engines work and then gives you the skills to understand how to build one yourself. There's always a practical application to their courses that really puts your knowledge to the test. It's that extra layer of learning that traditional methods just don't do. But Brilliant does. To try everything Brilliant has to offer free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/drive61 or click on the link in the description. And the first 200 of you to sign up for an annual premium subscription will get 20% off. And you'll want to take advantage of that. Thank you, Brilliant. So why did Senna admit to lying and intentionally crashing into Prost?
1.5 years later, he phoned me up and said, look, I'm sorry. Because he said then that he did not intentionally do it. He later admitted that he did intentionally do that to Prost. And when he phoned me back, he said, look, I apologize, I told you a lie. I'd like you to help me work for safety, and I'd like you to tell me how I should go about it.
To add a bit of context, Senna was still frustrated at what had gone on the year before, where he'd been disqualified for missing the chicane after another shunt with Prost. And his explanation for the 1990 crash at turn 1 was, I said to myself, okay, you try and work cleanly and do the job properly, and you get by stupid people. Alright, if tomorrow Prost beats me off the line, at the first corner I will go for it, and he'd better not turn in because he is not going to make it. And it just happened. Strong words there from Senna. And he rightly thought there had been an injustice with Prost in 1989. And in his mind, he wanted to make things right, no matter what. So he had this shunt in 1990 and basically was trying to cover it up. Find out more about Senna's driving technique here and here. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.